Hello folks and welcome to the Vertigo Tea Party and Tea Time. Today we're going to talk about this whole Zoe Quinn scandal, though I'm not really going to talk about the details of what went on there. I actually want to talk more about the reactions on both sides of this discussion, and I'm using those terms very loosely. Now, if you're not aware, in a nutshell, what's happened, Zoe Quinn is a female game developer. She created Depression Quest, and here recently, there was some information leaked by an ex-boyfriend where allegedly she had cheated on him with several other young men, and several of them work in the game industry. And of course, there was accusations that she did that, and then they gave her favorable reviews, etc., etc. And of course, as you can expect with the internet, unfortunately, when this information came out, she started getting a lot of death threats, rape threats, other nonsense. Here recently, both her and Phil Fish, who one of her biggest defenders, Phil Fish being the developer of Fez, both got hacked. They've been doxxed, or at least Phil Fish was doxxed, I think. If you're not familiar, doxxed just means that basically they released a bunch of information about him, like various logins, etc. The Polytron account was locked, the company, or his company. A lot of bad shit went down in a nutshell. So that's roughly what's going on right now. And again, I don't want to talk. I'm going to try to avoid the details of what happened or didn't happen or allegedly happened or whatever, unless it's pertinent to the topic that I want to discuss. Now, when this first came out, people pretty much picked sides immediately, as tends to be the case. One side picked Zoe Quinn, said, you know, the details of her sexual life and her private life are unimportant to anyone but her. It's nobody's business. The other side said it does matter because this shows some kind of corruption that's going on with the games industry, that she's trading, you know, favors for better game reviews, better coverage in major outlets, and it opens up a big question about ethics and gaming journalism, etc., etc. So that's our two main sides, and I hate that we even have to have sides in this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first and foremost, I want to get this out of the way because apparently for a lot of folks, if you don't say things explicitly, then they just think that implicitly you're backing other things. I know that doesn't make any goddamn sense. But to be 100% clear, it is not okay to dox or harass or send rape threats or do any of that shit to somebody just because you don't like what they did. It doesn't matter that, you know, even if you 100% believe, if there came out to be 100% proof that this kind of thing was going on where she was in a relationship with these guys and they gave her better coverage and reviews for her game, it doesn't matter if that was 100%. That does not make it okay to send nasty ass messages, especially death and rape threats to her. And this goes triple for doxing, releasing their private information. That's fucked up. If you are doing that, if you are participating in this, you're a fucking asshole. You are a piece of shit. Period. End of story. It's not okay. It's fucking not okay. And I shouldn't even have to say this, and you'll see why I'm making a point to underline this, that people tend to assume that if you don't downplay it, then you're automatically supporting it, which is, of course, absolutely fucking asinine. So, along with this story, apparently someone made a video, or there was a few videos out there that were talking about this issue with Zoe Quinn and the developers and this supposed relationship and this supposed, relationship for better reviews type thing. And supposedly, again, I'm saying supposedly, I'm not trying to say it's smartassy. I seriously mean supposedly or allegedly, she sent out DMCA notices or takedowns against one or more of these videos. And if you're not familiar with that, with YouTube, let's say somebody like re-uploaded one of my YouTube videos, or somebody uploaded The Lord of the Rings. They can send a DMC takedown to have that video taken down because they're the rights owner for that video. Well, supposedly again, this is completely allegedly. I have not looked into this at all, and it doesn't matter one way or the other. as far as whether it's true or not in this specific discussion or this specific topic. But anyway, supposedly she had done this. She had a DMC takedown against these videos that were discussing this issue under some minor pretense of owning some of the content. And of course, as any time anything blows up, a lot of the big people in gaming are pestered to talk about it. Total Biscuit, Jim Sterling, all those folks are asked to give their opinion. And a lot of people went to Total Biscuit. And Total Biscuit made a statement about this. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will put a link to it in the description below. But I want to read the summary he puts at the bottom. Because he was pretty moderate on the whole thing. He was very much like, well, if this happened, it's bad, blah, blah, blah. But I want to read very quickly the too long didn't read portion, because I want to underline what he said, or I want to highlight what he said and highlight how ridiculous some of the reactions to him were. If Zoe, and this is Total Biscuit, if Zoe Quinn did engage in censorship via the abuse of DMCA on YouTube, then I thoroughly condemn her actions as being both fucking stupid and unethical. If outlets did provide her favorable coverage because she had intimate relations with some of the writers, they're goddamn idiots for doing it. Why the hell would you compromise the trust of your readers for that? The shitstorm is too insane right now to make a huge amount of sense of it, and I have no idea what is true and what isn't. Cooler heads prevail. Heard of that phrase? Calm the fuck down, and things might become clearer. Also, please stop shouting at me. Thanks. That was Total Biscuit's, again, the short version. If you want to read the long version, I will have a link in the description below so that you can get the whole thing in context. I have my own personal biases, and I try to approach all situations as logically as I can, and I try to weigh both sides. I have a hard time seeing that as other than, yes, he was saying if these things happen, they are bad. Let's take these actions out of the context of everything else, right? And let's just use generic people or generic things, whatever. If someone uses a DMCA takedown on a YouTube video just because they're discussing things they don't want discussed, this is bad, right? We've agreed this. We've hit this topic multiple times where game developers of bad games have used it to take down criticisms of their game. We've agreed this is a bad thing. Therefore, if she did that, and again, if she did that, then it was bad and it was unethical. If it applied before, it should apply to this as well. Again, I shouldn't have to say this, but obviously leaking the intimate details of her love life was also wrong. You can't, just because I say this is wrong doesn't mean, well, I'm saying this other thing is okay. They're both wrong. They're both wrong, just to be clear. The other part of what he's saying, at least here, or the main other point in this too long didn't read, was that if the gaming press traded positive coverage, positive reviews, increased coverage because of personal relationships that some of the writers had, this is bad. Again, taken completely out of this situation with her specifically, if press covered another game because they were buddy-buddy with these people, or their brother, it was, the head editor's brother was making a game, and they made sure to give it like 10 out of 10, and they gave it a front page coverage. Anything else like that would be considered bad. Therefore, if her and a writer were having intimate relations and they were giving her more coverage because of that, it's wrong. That's why I'm saying what his statement was very in the middle. He wasn't slamming her. He wasn't talking about any of the other stuff on its own, the alleged cheating, any of that. He's saying these specific things are bad. And again, generally out of context, the vast majority of people are going to agree that trading favors for positive reviews, bad. Abusing the DMCA takedown to avoid criticism, also bad. So now the reaction to this is disappointing, though it really shouldn't be surprising. I saw people going ballistic on him. There was multiple people saying you need to stop watching Total Biscuit because he is advocating the harassment of Zoe Quinn. Nowhere in this message, and again, link in the description so you can read the whole thing so that you are fully informed. Nowhere in this does he even come close to advocating this. The only thing you can accuse him of is not specifically saying, hey, attacking her is bad. In fact, he might say that in the long term. I just reread it, but I didn't notice it. But he doesn't really have to. It's kind of implied. And even if you think he should have said it, to argue that he's automatically advocating it just because he didn't explicitly say it's bad is absolutely asinine and incredibly just dishonest. It's incredibly dishonest. And it's sad to see the number of people actually agreeing with that. Like, yeah, he's advocating this thing against her. I'm sorry, just because bad things are happening to her because this stuff came out, the doxing, the attacks, which are incredibly shitty and worse. Let's be clear. Those things are worse. Death threats, rape threats, the doxing, all of that is absolutely, without a question, worse than even, again, if she did do these things. Those are worse. I guess subjectively they are worse, but I think most people will agree that death threats probably a little worse than DMCA takedown. Just my opinion. But it doesn't cancel out, right? And the thing is, when I was reading a lot of these tweets and messages by a lot of these game developers more like the journalists and crap like that, they completely ignored the DMCA takedown stuff. They focused entirely on, well, let's ignore all that. Let's ignore the possibility that there were some favors going on for positive reviews. Let's ignore the DMCA takedown. Let's ignore some of this other stuff. Let's focus entirely on this single thing. The flip side is that I see a lot of people on the anti-Zoe Quinn side, I guess you would call it, saying, well, yeah, she's getting attacked, but that doesn't, let's not talk about that. We need to focus on the main topic at hand. We need to focus on the possible corruption. We need to focus on the DMCA takedown. We need to focus on this other stuff that's fishy. Yeah, that's equally bad. That's just as bad. You can't say, we need to bring all this to light, right? We need to say, okay, this supposed behavior, if it's happening, is bad. Sleeping with developers and the developers, sleeping with a journalist and then the journalist going ahead and advocating that person's game or whatever, giving extra coverage. This is bad, but we need to say, hey, look, this shit's bad, but this other crap where you're sending her rape threats and doxing, this is awful too. This is incredibly awful. I can say, I think you're a bad person, or I can say, I think you're wrong for this, but at the same time say, what's happening to you is completely out of hand, is completely unwarranted, right? I can do both of those things. But unfortunately, both sides are taking like one stance or the other. They want to ignore one side and focus entirely on the other. And the other thing I'm seeing, which is really just, and this has been happening a lot lately, but this has really brought it to a head, is that I'm seeing a lot of developers and journalists, they're blaming the gaming community. Look how terrible the gaming community is. This is why you can't have great games. This is going to be the death of gaming because the gamer community is so awful. They hacked Phil Fish and they got his information and they doxed him, you stupid evil gamers. Like this, those kind of statements are pure idiocy, flat up idiocy. The people involved in this kind of shit, the doxing, the rape threats, the death threats, while they are scumbags, you would be hard pressed to say that they are any kind of remotely significant portion of the gamer community. You're talking about 0.01% of the people doing these things and saying, well, they're representative of the entirety of the gamer community. This doesn't work. And this is not hashtag not all gamers bullshit. Such a shitty defense to say that you can't, that this very small portion is representative gaming. I'm sorry. No. If if you go to GameStop, if you go into a Call of Duty chat room, or not chat room, but lobby, if you go watch a League of Legends stream, and you mention Zoe Quinn, or even Phil Fish, what percentage of people do you think actually know who the hell those people are? Even know who they are? On top of that, what percentage of these people are doing these terrible things, sending these threats, being involved with the doxing, all this other crap? What percentage do you think it's going to be? Incredibly, incredibly small. So that's why I'm so goddamn sick and tired of hearing these developers trying to say, oh, all these gamers are fucking terrible. Yes, we need to look at this and say, why does things like this happen, insofar as when somebody posts an article they don't like, or when that, and I forget, for that Call of Duty, they made some minor change and he got death threats and other shit. Yes, I'm not saying to ignore that. But at the same time, you can't say, this is a problem, this is representative of us. This is a representative of this community. Because it's absolutely not true. Just because a few loud children or whack jobs are screaming the loudest doesn't mean it's representative of the community. Again, you could do this with anything. I can go on Tumblr and find some extreme feminists saying things like, anytime a man has sex with a woman, it's automatically rape. I could find these people. I can find these nut jobs, and I can say, this is feminism. This is what this is about. And I probably shouldn't have brought up feminism, because I sure as fuck don't want to read that shit in the comments. But I hope you get my point. I hope you get my point, and I'm belaboring it on purpose, that you can't just pick out the loudmouths. You can't focus on the extremists and say, this is a representative of the community. But again, at the same time, we can't ignore it either. But especially when I see game journalists and game developers, especially the game journalists, saying shit like this. Even before all of this, you already have a not that great reputation with gamers. There's already a lot of questions going on about how ethical you guys are, how unbiased you are, when you're giving these games great reviews, when you're going to these behind closed doors press meet and greets with the developers before you actually review the game, that kind of shit going on. You've already got not a great reputation, and then you come out and try to paint your own readers as being scumbags. This isn't helping you. This is part of the reason why they hate you. Or don't hate you, but they don't like you, they disagree with you loudly, and they don't trust you, and you're just making it worse. You're turning this into, and it's kind of already was, but you're turning this into a gamers versus journalists thing. You guys are supposed to be the professionals, right? Yes, there's assholes posting on your forums saying, this review you did, you're just a fanboy, you must have got paid off by Sony or whoever, telling you to eat a dick, whatever. You know what? You're the fucking professional. You're the one who needs to rise above this and not get in the pig pen. Don't let them get you to your level, right? I've done customer tech support for probably going on 5-ish years now, over various years. When some customer asshole calls me belligerent, calls me names and shit, you know what I do? I don't go, well, fuck you, you piece of shit. All you customers are the same. Bunch of fucking morons wasting my time. You guys are, not all of you, just to be clear, some of you folks are dragging down to the level. And don't get me wrong, again, I've worked tech support for a long time. I've dealt with shitbag customers. And I have slipped up my fair share of times. So I know how frustrating it can be to work hard on something, and then people just throw it in your face, throw the shit in your face, blah, blah, blah. So obviously different realms here, but roughly the same idea. And I know it's even harder for you guys. I don't doubt that for a second, because you put your heart and soul into these reviews. You spend a lot of hours on it. You edit it, you re-edit it, you re-edit it, you have people read it, you do it again, you put it up, and it gets slammed for being fanboyism. Did you even play the game? You're getting paid off, blah, blah, blah. And I totally get that shit can get to you after a while, without question. But you have got to rise above that shit. If you get in the mud with these people, with these loud assholes, and say, well, all you gamers are garbage, and you're sick, and, this is why gaming is dying, because of the shitty players. This isn't helping. This isn't helping. It sucks, but you got to take the high road. That's what being a journalist means. And it's unfortunate. And again, I'm not saying, well, let's just ignore the assholes. I'd love to, let's talk about some solutions. Let's look at some possible solutions. None of those solutions, by the way, involve painting gamers or the gaming community with a brush of being total assholes. There's also a complete lack of objectivity on both sides. For example, when Phil Fish's company's website was hacked, and I completely forget the name now, there was a message on the front. You know how it is when they're hacked. The hackers had to put their message on the front, blah, blah, blah. So it said it was hacked by V, which is a forum in 4chan. And it gave a message that said something along the lines of, I am a mod of V and a leader of Anonymous, and blah, blah, blah. We will not forget, the Anonymous thing. Well, a lot of people pointed out a few details about that made it look like, or pointed out that this doesn't seem like the work of people in that forum. And again, not really going to go into details, but I actually read, some of the information, and a lot of it checked out. A lot of it didn't make sense. And again, there's a whole, I could make 2-hour video on this. This shit is interesting on the investigation front. But regardless of all that, some solid points that says something is weird here. And again, because I feel like I have to, no, I'm not insinuating Phil Fish hacked and doxed himself. But there was some definitely interesting things to kind of point out that maybe this wasn't who they said it was, like a false flag type operation. Well, of course, none of the defenders, the very loud defenders, said anything about this. Immediately said, oh, look at the terrible 4chan, MRA, pieces of shit. They're blah, blah, blah. Immediately just completely ignored. And they, on top of that, they argued any person who said, well, actually, it is a little bit weird that they did this and this and this. This really isn't their MO. And they're like, oh, are you saying that Phil Fish hacked himself and doxed himself? And to be clear, some people did say that. Some people said, yes, him and Quinn have doxed themselves as some kind of way to get flame. Again, I'm not going to go into the details, but to be fair, there are definitely people out there saying that, without question. But they're also just blatantly dismissing other odd things and just flat out saying, nope, it was V. It was /V. It was 4chan. It was definitely them. Those scumbags, blah, 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 blah. And again, absolutely no objectivity, no looking at the information and going, well, let's look at these pieces of information on their own, unemotionally, logically, and rationally. Let's figure out what's going on here. Because quite frankly, I think there's a very interesting story going on here. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of stuff doesn't add up on both sides. And I found it quite intriguing, to be honest. Even outside of the drama BS, again, there's just so many odd things that don't add up, again, on both sides, that it's worth investigating. Something game journalists do. But regardless of all that, there's some interesting stuff going on. But both sides ignore any evidence. And what's worse, they get that thing going on where they will confirmation bias. Hell, there we go. Where any evidence they find that backs up their theory, they grab a hold of and they unquestionably hold on to it and use it as 100% proven evidence. Anything that's evidence against their stance, they completely dismiss it and say, no, it's obviously fake. This is not important, or they'll just ignore it. Whatever it is. Both sides are doing this poorly. So, for example, the whole V thing, the people against Zoe Quinn are saying, well, obviously the way this was done, this 100% proves it must have been Phil Fish and Zoe Quinn hacking the website. The opposing side says, no, it was definitely V. They put their name all over it. They hate Zoe Quinn anyway, so they definitely did it. both sides are using this information, even though there's not 100% evidence of that. And like I said, there's a lot of nuances there, but they're being completely ignored because people just want to go the easy route, grab the information they like, and use it, and completely dismiss anything that goes against their current stance. This is not unusual by any stretch. I used to be big into the skeptic community, and I would see this all the time, especially with like conspiracy theorists and all that shit. But that's beside the point. And I probably will wrap up here because I've just been rambling about this too long. But the thing that's so disappointing is that this topic is an important one, I think. The topic being the cozy relationship between developers and journalists, right? And the possibilities of corruption. This is a good and this is an interesting topic, and it's one that needs to be talked about. And this is a great time to do it. But we can't. We can't have this conversation because we have people with bullhorns on both sides of the fence, and the people in the moderate middle are going, well, there's some fun. You can't hear those people. Those people you don't hear. You hear about the people on both extremes. And what's the most disappointing about this is that that a lot of these people on the extreme side are the ones who should be more objective. They are the ones who should be looking at this from a more factual standpoint, from a non-emotional standpoint, and trying to find out what's going on and pulling a good conversation, a good debate topic out of this. Instead, they're just hopping on a bandwagon. They're picking a bandwagon and running with it. That's one of the worst parts of all this. Random internet people, whatever. It's gonna, be whatever. But seeing the professionals just jump on the bandwagon to ignore these discussion topics is really sad. And like I say, hopefully, maybe once the dust calms down a little bit, we can have this discussion. We can say, well, how cozy is it okay to be? Because obviously, a lot of these developers and journalists are going to get to know each other and become friends. I don't think anybody wants to say journalists and devs should never be friends. I think that's not fair. I don't think that's realistic at all. But at the same time, especially the journalists need to understand that they have to be careful with that. They need to say, hey, you know what? You're a really good friend. I've been assigned to review your game, but you know what? I have a hard time being objective about this. I think there's a conflict of interest. I want to hand this review off to someone else. Or if you're going to go ahead and review it or cover it, full disclosure. Say, hey, you know what? Very top of the review. Say, hey, you know what? I have a personal relationship with this person, whether it be best friends or we used to date or he's my brother or whatever. At the top, and say, so keep that in mind in my review. I'm going to try to be objective, but maybe my biases will leak in because I'm human. So I think that's what needs to happen. Again, I don't think I think transparency is important, and I know I'm big in transparency. I really think it's in a lot of things. I think it's important to get people's trust or to keep people's trust is to be transparent. Yes, you're still going to get those people who say, "Oh, well, you had another writer that's best friends with this, and he handed it off," but you're still going to be, still going to be biased. Whatever. You can't base your decisions off what a few extreme people will say. Most people will appreciate that. Most people will appreciate the fact that you are trying your best to be objective and make sure that these biases aren't in play. And being more open about things like these meetings, these little parties that the developers throw or that these publishers throw, that the media's invited to and they're wine and dined or whatever their version of it is, and allowed to play these games or whatever. There needs to be upfront about that. Say, look, this happened. you know, and obviously, you know, and again, I don't mean to get off topic because now I'm kind of having a discussion with myself. But there's nuances there too, because, well, what do we need to discuss? I mean, what do we need to disclose? Do we disclose that they gave us a press copy? I mean, that's pretty standard, right? You get a press copy. This is not considered favoritism. This is not considered them, you know, doing something extra for you. This is normal. This is the standard. You get a free copy of the game so that you can review it, and you get it early. It comes with the job. That's how it works. And again, there's a discussion to be had there. What should be disclosed? What doesn't need to be, etc. So again, this is a great discussion that we could be having, but people are so hung up on these other extremes that they refuse to see any points other than the one they want to see, and they want to paint the other side. Again, I'm talking about both sides here. They want to paint the other side. The journalists and the game developers on Zoe Quinn's side are painting the gamers as terrible people, and this is why we can't have nice things. And the people on the anti-Zoe Quinn side are saying, see, this is the smoking gun. This is the final evidence we have that the corruption goes all the way through the gaming journalism. Both sides are ridiculous. And these extremists are killing our ability to have a discussion on this. But Jim Sterling recently made a post about this whole kerfuffle, and it was pretty moderate as well. I don't know if he's been really under attack lately. I think he probably gets a little bit more leeway than Total Biscuit. A lot of people don't like Total Biscuit anyway, but I haven't seen anyone attacking him, luckily. And I don't necessarily agree with all what he said, but I respect the fact that he tried to be objective about it. I respect the fact that he was trying to take the emotion out of it and go, okay, let's look at this facts. Let's look what's going on. Let's look at both the pros and the cons of both sides, and let's take that and let's at least, maybe not discuss it, but let's point out what's good and what's bad, or at least what I think is good and what's bad. This is the kind of thing I should be seeing from all these game developers, from all these publishers, from other people, again, on both sides of this whole situation. But for the most part, it's not. It's jumping on the bandwagon. Everybody who doesn't jump in completely on my side, 100% unquestionably, you're a terrible person. You're an MRA, or you're a social justice warrior, and you're trying to destroy games, or you're what's terrible with games, and you're part of the problem in journalism. It's really sad and pathetic. So anyway, I think I've said my piece as far as that goes. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please leave your comments in the discussion below, or in the comments below. Please be civil, for Christ's sakes. Don't in my video where I'm saying let's be civil and let's talk about this like adults, be calling each other a social justice warrior or MRA or whatever. But anyway, yes, leave comments civilly if you would, please. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'll see you next time.